to see whether we can get the video to work, and I don't think it's going to happen. It's the perils of rural broadband, I'm afraid. But as we abandon that, we're going to try something else here. If I can share my screen, hopefully I go back.
Yep.
We have a giraffe and some impala. Now, there's nothing particularly significant about this image, but there is a fade, a deliberate fade between some of the images you're just about to see, and we're not sure whether it will work or not, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. 60 miles away from where this photo was taken, yeah, we're not moving forward. Right, bear with me. Let's try that one. I'm not moving forward at all. I'm going to stop sharing and go back in and try that again. Share my screen. But it's not allowing me to advance. Any comment, Tim?
Were you sharing PowerPoint or your entire desktop at that point?
PowerPoint.
Well, if you press cursor right, would it proceed?
Right. I think come out of that and go back to that. Screen share, and hopefully share that. Slideshow. Yes. So 100, you can see that now, can you?
Yep.
Right. So 160 miles to the west of where this image is taken is this. And this is a test drill site carried out by a company from Canada called Reconnaissance Africa, or Recon Africa for short. And Namibia and Botswana have granted a license to Recon Africa to drill for oil. And the license covers 8.5 million acres, which is quite staggering. And Recon Africa believe that underneath the area in Namibia and in Botswana, there is an oil field that could potentially be the largest oil field left on the planet. And probably the largest oil field is in Saudi Arabia, the Ghawar oil field, and it has the potential to deliver 104 billion barrels of oil. Well, if this project gets underway, they estimate that underneath the Okavango and surrounding area, there could be as much as 120 billion barrels of crude oil. Now, at the moment, Recon Africa say this is purely exploratory, and that is mildly concerning when you consider a statement that was read out this very week on Wednesday. If I can quote you, the Namibian Minister of Mines and Energy said, and I quote, "This is a great period for the people of Namibia, with the results of the well confirming a big potential for a very valuable energy resource for our country and therefore a significant development for Namibia onshore exploration efforts. The positive results of this well have provided us with the critical information required to unlock the country's petroleum prospectivity, and it is the first step in the process of locating significant accumulations, and we can now confidently confirm Namibia is endowed with an active onshore petroleum base. That sounds to me very much like their intention is not just to explore. The Namibian government is absolutely in there with Recon Africa. In fact, they're a 10% shareholder in the company. And just the devastation that this site could cause, this map shows you the areas. You can see in Botswana the area license for petroleum prospecting is right alongside the handle of the delta. And over in Namibia, the sites approved for drilling there, if you look at the top boundary, it runs along 150 miles of the Omatako River, and of course if there's any pollution whatsoever, there's only one place it's going to end up, and that's in the Okavango Delta. And I find that quite a terrifying prospect, and I think everything should be done that's possible to prevent this ever actually coming to fruition. Not to mention the risks of pollution, just the burning of 120 billion barrels of oil at a time when we're trying to control climate change. It seems absolutely absurd that this should ever go ahead. The networks of access roads, truck traffic, heavy machinery, pipelines, drill rigs and gas production wells all over that area, there is absolutely nothing positive will come out of it. And many of the people that live around the delta, they're concerned because they rely on groundwater for their own water supply, and if that becomes contaminated, that will affect them hugely. They rely on the Okavango for their whole lifestyle, and if it becomes polluted, there's nowhere for the pollution to escape. It will be a permanent contamination. There are also soundings coming out from Namibia that the oil company are looking at doing seismic surveys, which would impact negatively on elephants that use the whole area as part of their migration routes. And the Namibian government have actually auctioned, quite bizarrely, they have put 90 elephants from the area where the test drilling sites are, they've put them up to auction to the highest bidder. I find that quite ludicrous when you consider that the elephants are social animals that live in huge family groups. How you can extract 90 elephants to go elsewhere. UNESCO, because of course the Okavango Delta is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and they are monitoring the situation with attention and concern, and quite rightly so. So it's a scary thing to happen. I hope it doesn't. There's lots of environmental groups campaigning to stop this oil exploration. But this is what we might end up with. which is a tragedy. And I don't know about you, but if I had a choice between this and the wildlife, then there's only one choice to make, really. All that is a huge threat to the delta. It's coming under other pressures. Climate change itself has reduced the rainfall in the area. Another thing that's happened for some of the endangered species like black and white rhinos, they have been poached extensively past year because of the COVID pandemic. Because of the pandemic, there are not the number of tourists going around the delta looking at the wildlife, so the poachers are having a free run within the depths of the delta, and as well as poaching for the rhino horn, you have elephants being poached for ivory and for meat, and sadly giraffes as well are popular targets for the poachers for meat. Botswana, when it comes to the wildlife, they banned trophy hunting in the delta back in 2014, and 2 years ago the Botswanan government reinstated it. They didn't manage to get it off the restrictions, but they have now issued 287 licenses to shoot elephants. And the licenses, if you wanted to buy one, and I sincerely hope you wouldn't, would cost you approximately £31,000 a license. So it's a big money spinner for the Botswanan government, and they claim that it is to provide a solution to the growing human-elephant conflict, and it will provide income for local communities. And I would suggest that it's more likely to line the pockets of some government officials, and that licenses are for areas of the delta conflict with the local farming people. So it all seems a bit tragic, and at the moment there are 24 species of globally threatened birds to be found in the delta, including 6 species of vulture, the southern ground hornbill, the wattled crane, that slaty egret that you saw, as well as endangered species like the wild dog. And we just hope and pray that this oil exploration does not come to pass. And I can say really no more on the matter. So I will call it a halt at that. Very briefly, you can check out, in light of the fact that you couldn't see that video, there are 3 things you can look up on YouTube, and you'll see videos there that were taken by me in the delta. The Day in the Delta is basically just a compilation of sightings. The middle one, the Makoro on the delta, will take you down one of the lagoons festooned with those water lilies, and the rescue in the delta, you'll get to see how we rescued the vehicle that was bogged down in a hippo highway. For those of you that prefer to read, I have a safari adventures blog which you can check out at duncanmcnab.scot, and you'll get a day-by-day, blow-by-blow account of what it's like to do a camping safari in the delta. And at that point I will stop sharing, and anyone that wants to ask any questions, you're more than welcome.
Duncan, I had a sort of geographical question. That the Okavango Delta seems to be an unusual delta in being an inland delta. What happens to the water?
Well, the reason the water can't escape, it's as a result of tectonic activity, first and foremost, that pushed up the highlands in Angola that generates the rainfall.
Yes.
And there are also two tectonic lines, one of which prevents the water travelling any further southeast than the actual delta reaches. The vast majority of the water is lost to evaporation or taken up through the plant life in the delta. There's only a small proportion of it actually seeps into the water table, because when it arrives, it's at the end of the rainy season, and the water table is actually quite topped up by the local rains. So they estimate it's a very high proportion goes through the plant life and through evaporation.
That's interesting, because you would expect that would lead to a massive buildup of salt, like the Dead Sea, which is where the Jordan evaporates to nothing.
And that is precisely where the hippos and the buffalo and the elephant come into play. Without their constant reshaping of the delta, you would get that buildup of salts, and it would become a sterile place for the wildlife. But because every single year the delta takes a different formation, as I say, one year it can be a section can be underwater, the following year it's grassland, and the nutrients are constantly being moved around, and that allows the plant life to flourish.
What happens to the salts? Where do they go?
You can see them from the plane as you fly in over the southern border of Botswana, right up through to the delta. I remember looking down through the window and asking, what are these white crescents on the ground? Yes. And Duncan knowledgeably said, I don't know. So we asked the guide, and he said, because if there was anything Ace didn't know, I never found it. But he said that's the residue of the salt. Those are the salt pans, and they are much bigger than you think they are from the plane above.
Yes.
But, and there are also areas within the delta which dry out, and you're left with small areas of salt pan. They do exist within the delta.
Yeah.
But presumably they're not growing.
No.
No.
You do get. I mean, we passed through various areas like that, and particularly during the dry season, where everything is bare. You can see it quite clearly there. But then when the floods come in, those salts get redistributed around.
Interesting.
I've got one comment, Duncan.
Yes.
Earlier when you were talking about the painting the rear ends of cows,
yes,
and later on you came to the McDonald's of the Okavango, which has markings on its bottom.
yes.
Is there any connection between the markings on the bottoms of such deer or whatever they are and the cow?
That was on the impala, and of course you also have the circular markings on the rear end of the common waterbuck. But I'm not entirely sure what purpose they serve. With the waterbuck, it may well be if one is startled and takes off, that white, it may serve the same purpose as in a roe deer or a rabbit with a white tail. It can be an alarm signal I'm running away from the trouble, follow me.
Yeah.
So that's a possible one. As for the McDonald's of the bush, I'm not entirely sure what purpose it serves.
But how does it relate to the cow decoration? I mean, are the
Well,
predators confusing the two, possibly, or anything like that?
I think the whole thing about painting the eyes on the backside of cattle is the particular style of eye that they choose. It's a very staring appearance that it gives, and it's all about convincing the predator that it has been rumbled, and therefore the element of surprise has gone. I know you're there, even though the cow can be quite happily grazing grass at the other end and have no idea that the predator's about. And it's common in other species. You'll see butterflies with large eye spots on their wings, and it's a deterrent to would-be predators. You have been seen.
Fair enough.
But lions are not stupid creatures by any stretch of the imagination, and my suspicion is that they will eventually get wise to this, and they will eventually learn to ignore it. But I could be entirely wrong there. I really don't know.
Well, I think you may be right, especially if all the cows have eyes on their bottoms.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they're going for the
And
ones
I
down
think
at the moment. If there are none of those, they'll have to go for the ones with the eyes on their bottoms.
Exactly. But in the same instance, they might think, well, I won't go for these cows because they're looking at me. I'll go for an impala because it belongs to McDonald's and I like it. It's speculation at this juncture, even though the study's been going on for 4 years.
Yeah.
But if it does work, it is such an easy and cheap way to protect the livestock.
Yes. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, as you say, whether lion prides will be able to transmit that information, especially since they're still being hunted. Because, as we know, all these predator species like lion that go in packs, like lions and bulls, the family groups, and they pass information from one generation to the next. And of course, the eldest ones are the most likely to be shot by hunters because they're the ones that are usually most prominent in the landscape, watching for other groups of predators or scavengers coming in. So it'll be interesting to see just what effect that kind of cultural transmission within lion prides has. Yeah. And indeed, as you say, whether they'll rumble it eventually.
I think there's other factors at play as well, and that comes down to the availability of their normal prey. Providing there's a healthy population of impala or kudu, then the lion doesn't necessarily have to go looking too far for its next meal. And it may well be a seasonal thing as well. During the times, the dry season, there are many animals that are struggling to survive because of the lack of water, and the weak and the elderly become easy prey for the predators. But when times are good for the prey animals, they are not so good for the lions, and they may well choose that moment to go and predate upon an easier option.
I have another semi-geographical question. Or even geological. I was intrigued by what you were saying about the termites and how these long-lived termite mounds can actually give rise to the formation of islands in the delta. Termites have been around for an awfully long time and presumably have been doing this sort of thing for a long time. So you would think that termite-generated islands are things that ought to turn up in the geological record as well. Huh? There might have been termite islands in the days of dinosaurs, and I wonder, has anyone seen them?
Now that I don't know the answer to that. It may well be that because the termites are inhabiting an area that floods regularly, they choose to build their nest up the way rather than go down. And the floods can be quite significant in random years. And so these termite mounds grow to, some of them are absolutely huge.
Yes.
But I am reliably assured that every single island in the Okavango originated from termite mounds.
Does that happen in any other part of the world, or is that unique to Okavango?
I really don't know the answer to that. And of course, when a termite mound is formed, as water approaches, it gets diverted around it. So that as well alters the flow of the delta. And when the water's been diverted away, it allows plant life to get established around the base of the termite mound. It really is an incredibly dynamic habitat for these animals. It's constantly changing, and that is the key to the success of the delta, that it is constantly in flux and changing, and in no short measure because of the animals that live there. And even the plant life that grows around the edges of the lagoons and the swamps, that in turn slows down the flow of the water and allows islands to expand as well. So the plant life itself plays a part in forming the layout of the delta. But I should stress, I am absolutely not an expert. I am merely an enthusiast.
It is interesting, especially on the Mokoro, noticing how the water in the rivers is not turbid. It's really quite calm, even though it has a flow to it.
Yeah.
And that's that must give right. I mean, I know we didn't see any of the underwater life, but do you know anything more about the underwater life?
Well,
Apart from
it goes back to the three biggest animals there: the hippo, the buffalo, and the elephant. They, in their activities, create channels, and that allows everything from a Nile crocodile down to the smallest fish. It gives them access to other areas of the delta as the floods come in. And hippos, for example, are quite habitual in their grazing habits. They will stake a territory in part of the delta which gives them good access to grazing ground, and they will stay there, and they will use the same route to exit the swamps to get to the grazing grounds, and they will do that day after day, and that generates one of these hippo highways, and that has a big effect on the flow of the water. Elephants, as I say, you can have a herd of maybe 20, 30, as many as 50 and more elephants crossing a section of lagoon, and that in turn will generate a channel which will send the water off in a different direction. So the fish utilize all these channels to get around to new areas to where they can spawn.
Interesting to see the effects on the behavior with this constant motion of the waters and the changing of the channels, whether the fish demonstrate territoriality in the way that, say, salmon or trout do.
I don't know the answer to that, but it's estimated that because the delta is so flat water coming in from the Okavango River will only travel at approximately 1 kilometre a day. So it's very, very slow moving. The faster waters are up in the Panhandle, but then when it reaches the really flat area, and I'm led to believe that this is an accurate quote, but they estimate that over a 4-kilometre stretch of the delta, it slopes away to the southeast to the tune of 1 millimetre. So not the best place to go freewheeling on a push bike. It is incredibly flat, and that is why the water spreads out as gently and as slowly as it does.
I have another water-related question. That, given the very strange nature of the river, starting in the mountains and ending at the delta, and not connecting to the sea, would that not mean that the fish in this river system will be endemic and unique to that river, and different from the fishes everywhere else in Africa?
There are a lot of the species of fish retreat with the flood and move back into the deeper waters of the Panhandle. You have fish like the catfish that have the ability to breathe air as well as through gills underwater. And they will try and survive in some of the swamps as they dry out. And they can cope for a reasonable period of time, covered in the mud, but occasionally getting a breath. And that in itself provides food for everything from marabou storks, sea eagles, wild dogs that will happily go in after them, as will lions and leopards. But the lucky few can survive until the next flood comes, and so they will spend their whole life within the delta, whereas others will move back upstream to the deeper waters.
But even if they move upstream, they're not getting into a different river, are they?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I genuinely don't know the correct answer to that, but I think they will only move back as far as they necessarily have to survive, because the good living for them comes with the flood, and they want to be there ready to go back into the delta as the floodwaters arrive.
What I'm getting at is you would expect that there will be some really weird species that have been cut off from all their relatives for however many millions of years. The Okavango Delta has worked in this way. So that it's going to be, like these caves where you have weird species that aren't found anywhere else on the planet.
I don't know the answer to that, David, but I would suspect you're absolutely right in what you're saying. There's 89 different species of fish to be found there, supported by the delta, and I'm quite sure that some of those will only ever be found in the delta.
Do you know the age of the delta, Duncan? Because I remember Ace was talking about the geology of Zambia and Angola, and how the delta has not always been there in its current form, and that at some point the waters of the Quato were diverted into the Okavango rather than towards the sea.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly.
It was the action of the tectonic plates that created the delta. As to how many thousands of years ago that was, I'm not a geologist and I don't know the specific answer to that. But that was very much instrumental in the creation of the delta. It probably goes back hundreds of thousands of years, but you might know more about that than I do.
I believe Duncan, the Nile crocodile extends to the Okavango, and that's a long way from the Nile.
This is very true, but I think we're looking more at a name They don't necessarily all originate from the Nile, but yes, the delta is populated by Nile crocodiles, and you will see them quite frequently. One thing I should point out about the Makoro, to go out on the deltas, lagoons and river systems in the Makoro, you're also entering the territory of the most dangerous animal in Africa, the hippopotamus. And they do not like people intruding upon their territory. And there have been instances where the Makoro, people in the Makoro have been attacked, and a hippo can turn one over very easily. However, the nature of the hippo is that it likes to be able to totally submerge. So it likes the deeper water. It likes that level where it can stand with just its head poking out of the water. And if you think of the manner of propulsion of a Makoro, it's done with a punting pole. So it's far easier to propel a Makoro through the shallows, which is the part of the lagoons and rivers that the hippos do not feel secure in. So as long as you stick to the shallower waters, you're able to propel your Makoro, and you're unlikely to come to grief at the hands of a hippo.
Unless you give it a poke in the backside with your punt pole as you go over the top of it.
Not to be advised.
David, that was the most optimistic thing I think I've heard you say for a long time.
Right. Well, I've put a few links in the chat for everybody. I found the videos that Duncan mentioned on YouTube, so those are there if you want, and I pointed to his website as well, which has some blog posts on the matter. So if we're done with questions, could I ask David to make a vote of thanks?
Thank you, Tim, and indeed it's a great pleasure to propose a vote of thanks to Duncan for what's been such a remarkable and interesting evening. I think the liveliness of the discussion that's followed it shows how much he's caught our imagination on a subject entirely different from the subjects that have been covered by the other talks in this series, which demonstrates so successfully how we've been able in this society to pull together such a wide range of talent on so many different subjects and so many overlapping subjects. And this evening we've had remarkable photography and a portrait of a whole world that's quite different from anything that most of us know, and the interaction of animals in all sorts of ways that we wouldn't have expected. So I think that all of us who've tuned in this evening have been transported from our little rooms that we don't often leave these days into a part of the world that's refreshed our imaginations and done our curious minds a great deal of good. So I'd like us to join in thanking Duncan for such an interesting, entertaining and inspiring evening. Thank you, Duncan, very much.
Thank you very much, David.